This video covers how to replace a CV joint and CV boot on a Polaris Ranger.
Polaris, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure the vehicle's on the ground, and you're going to remove the cotter pin and the axle nut before you get started. If you have impact tools, this job will be a lot easier, but I'm going to show you that you guys can do this without any sort of fancy tools. So I'm just taking the cotter pin, bending it back out of the way, and grabbing it and pulling it through. And the straighter you make the cotter pin, the easier your life is when you're trying to get this guy through. So I'm just gonna grab it and pull it. Struggle just a little bit. Alrighty. Then I'm gonna put that off to the side. You also want to make sure that you have your nice magnetic dish. Then you want to figure out what size you have, obviously, so you can pull it off. Lucky guess for me. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my breaker bar and pop that puppy loose. So just break it loose. Didn't take very much force at all. And you're going to save your castle nut and the washer. Alrighty, at this point, you're going to remove the lug nuts, and with those loosened up, you'll be able to jack the vehicle up in the air. Now you can jack up your vehicle, or your Ranger. And you want to remove the rest of your lug nuts. Capture your washers. And remove the wheel and move it out of the way. You are looking from inside the vehicle out, so you're looking currently at viewpoint from the back of the rotor. I'm gonna cheat. So what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna pry in between, and that will help ensure that you can just quickly slide off the rotor. Then you just curl it back. We're on the driver's side, and there's no speed sensor. It's just a stainless brake line. So from this point, now what we have to do is remove the lower ball joint, and that's what's going to allow us to get that extra clearance to slide out the axle and then pull everything apart. So we are getting close. So you're going to remove the cotter pin so you can remove the lower ball joint. And pull it out. Alrighty, loosen it up. And this is when it's going to be nice to have a pry fork. So you can just hammer it in, pry up on it, and pop loose this lower joint. I'm going to use my larger hammer and really get into it, and surprisingly that was a little easier than anticipated. Alrighty, so I'm just going to pull this out of the way, and now I have my, let's get this, let's get the brakes out of the way, and now I've got my axle. I don't want that hanging. All right, so when you're removing the CV joint, I find it easiest to put the castle nut back on. And then what I do is I get my vice grips and an adapter, and I thread the adapter into my vice grips until it gets down to the clamping of the sides of the castle nut, and I make sure that it's very snug, because you're going to have to give it some good pulls to remove and separate. Looks about right. Loosen it up one. Alright, that feels good. Then what I do is I hold and slide and I pull. Oh, and there you go. CV boot comes out. So that's your CV joint, and we've got some dirt on the outside that's kind of concerning. So we're going to go ahead and clean this up really well and inspect all the bearings, and I'm going to show you guys how you can do that. We're going to go to a workbench. All right, so we got everything cleaned out. It had some plant material around the edges on the outside, but towards the inside everything was okay. There was a little bit of grit, but we cleaned it out really well, so I think we'll be okay. If you ever did come across this yourself, I'd really suggest, for the time and effort that you put into it, to just replace the CV joint as an assembly and just save yourself a whole bunch of time. So an easy way is to kind of just grab the edge of the tab and peel it back, and then you'll be able to slip the boot off. So all I did was I grabbed the end where this folds over, and I just started peeling it back. It takes some force, but I have faith that you guys will be able to get it done. Then you just want to clean up the surface area. So I just take my clamp, put it over, snug it up a little bit, just by hand. It's just pretty simple. You just tighten it up, and you're gonna slip it on like so, and then you're gonna tighten it one more time, because there is a notch that keeps it in place. It's just get your regular CV grease. It's just standard grease, and you're gonna want to fill the inside of the cavity of the CV joint. And what will happen is, when you fill the inside of the cavity, as you press it back on, and you're gonna have to hammer it on, as you press it back on, the axle shaft is gonna force all the grease into the rest of the bearings, all the ball bearings, and that's exactly what you want. Now you're also gonna notice that there's a C-clip here on the end of the axle. And the way to get over the C-clip is that you're going to make sure that your splines are lined up on your CV joint first. And it helps when everything's straight. So let's just get this straight again. Alright, so that's all straight. And you're going to want to have lots of rags, it's greasy. So everything's nice and straight. You're going to get it so that everything meshes, and then you're going to press. And when you press, you're going to feel it stop. And when it stops, you know that you are now on the C-clip. And from there, you're going to make sure that everything's perfectly straight, because if you have any angle, you're really going to be working against yourself. And you're going to take just a rubber mallet, and you're going to make sure the castle nut's on so you don't damage any threads. You're going to hammer it back on. And you'll know exactly when it goes on. You'll just feel it pop like it did, and give you a different thud sound. So you just get this guy over here too. So with the other style of clamp, what you're going to want to do is get it on as tightly as possible before you use your special crimp tool and tighten it up. And when it's finished, it'll have a nice beveled edge. and it's not going to go anywhere. So there you have it. Your two types of clamps. The one that you crimp with a specialty tool, and the one that you can move with no specialty tools, and then you just clamp it in. So now it's on to reassembly. Alright, so I'm just going to pull this up to the side, grab the axle, slip it in. Before I can do that, I need to make sure that this guy slips back on. And that just slides in, and then the axle will just slip right into that. So, there you go. So just pull that out to the side, and you'll know when everything's lined up, because it'll just all slide into place like so. So then you're going to grab your castle nut. You're going to grab your castle nut and put that on. So you grab the castle nut and slip it in. This keeps your assembly from falling apart. And then we're going to come back over here, and you're going to put on the lower ball joint. So grab your castle nut again. Just making sure you can see this. We're just going to lift it into place. Let me get this boot out of the way. I'm going to lift it into place here. And you just need enough to be able to get this guy on. Alrighty. So, all that is starting to look good. And you'll do your final torque for the axle when the wheel's back on the ground. Slip the pads back over. And get into place. Alrighty, so the next thing is you're gonna have to put your wheel back on, tighten up your lugs, so that you can then lower the UTV back onto the ground and do your final torque onto your axle nut. You can't do it up in the air because you're just going to end up rotating the wheel. So once you've done that, you'll put this back on the ground, tighten everything up, and you'll be ready to rock and roll. Be sure to put your cotter pin back on and your dust cover boot.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.